Welcome to the Australian Calabrese Cultural Association program, Sono Calabrese, in which we have conversation with members of our community who tell us a little about their life experience. I'm Vincent Mortfuni, your host, and I'm pleased to say that our guest today is a younger person of the Calabrese community, and in fact one who was born in the United States but is presently in Australia. And it's Laura Bartucca, a registered nurse who's qualified in nursing in the United States, but as she says, has followed her heart to Australia. Welcome, Laura, and thanks for making the time to have a chat with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Laura, you're a registered nurse. Where did you do your training?
So I went to college for a four-year nursing program at Regis College, which is a small Catholic college just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And then I began my work at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, and I worked there for about 2.5 years, and then just recently came to Australia in December to work as a nurse as well.
And are you working in any particular field in nursing or just general nursing?
So in America, I was on a general medicine floor, but here, working at the Royal Melbourne, I'm on a trauma and orthopedic floor, so more specialized.
Right, right. And I think you were born in Norwood,
I was,
Massachusetts,
yes,
which is what, slightly outside Boston?
yeah, just about 25 minutes outside of Boston.
Right. And with a population of what, under 40,000 or?
Yeah, just under
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And when did you were born in the United States?
Yes.
And I think you said you've got two siblings as well
Yep. So my oldest brother Vincenzo and middle brother Gianfranco, and we were all born
in the
in
United
Boston.
States. Yeah.
Yes.
When did your father migrate to the United States?
So my dad, when he was 18 years old, trialed moving to the US with his mom in 1979. He had an uncle that helped him come over.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, my nonna didn't like it too much, but my dad ended up staying
Yeah.
for the long run. Yeah,
And was your uncle in Norwood?
he was.
And that explains why they went to Norwood.
Why we chose Norwood. Yeah.
Another example of chain migration, as they call it. And is your nonna still living?
She is still living. Yeah.
But has refused to go to the United States.
Yeah, so she came back after she went in 1979. She went back twice. She came back when I was born in 1997, and then she came back in 2004. Um, but just for a short time. She grew up in a small village, and she just couldn't leave that life
Well,
behind.
where was your father born in Italy?
My father was born in Palermo,
Yeah,
which is in Vibo Valentia,
right.
just outside of Philadelphia, Calabria.
Yeah, and your mother?
My mother was born in Lucente, which is just another town outside of Philadelphia as well.
Right. So they're both from the province of Vibo Valentia, though. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And did your father ever tell you why he decided to migrate to the United States?
So I know that his dad was kind of in between Switzerland and Italy, constantly working. And my dad said that he knew that there was unfortunately not the greatest opportunities for him where he was growing up. So he knew that his uncle had was doing quite well in America, and he wanted to give it a try. Um, but I know that my dad kind of started from the bottom and really worked a few jobs to kind of get where he
Yeah.
was.
And what was your dad's field of work?
So he is a machinist. He currently he worked for the same company for about 30 odd years. Unfortunately, was laid off during kind of the recession in America. But when he first started, he was working in a pizzeria. He was doing this machinist job. And then I think he also worked as what we call like a bar back, kind of working behind a bar and
Yeah.
whatnot.
And so he arrived in 79 with his mother. His mother left.
After a few months,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did she ever tell you why she didn't like it in the United States?
I think we never really spoke about it.
I think you've muted yourself.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't hear.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, a bit better. Yeah.
Um, we never really spoke about it or asked her about it. It was kind of a sensitive subject. But from our understanding, it was that she just couldn't really leave that kind of farm life behind. The chickens, the pigs, the kind of just move into her own
Yeah.
speed. And
Yeah. Did your dad have siblings?
my dad has a sister who's still in Philadelphia. She
Right. And that might be a reason why your grandmother may not have wanted to go.
yeah,
And am I right that your parents married what in 1988 or thereabouts?
yes,
So according to Joe Avati, I don't know if have you heard of Joe Avati?
I have, yes.
Yeah. Well, he's got a theory that to know the date of the eldest child in any Italian family, you get the marriage date, add 12 months, and that's it. So your brother would have been born in 1989.
1990.
Oh,
Just about. Yeah.
close. Maybe it's because it's a different hemisphere up there
There you
that
go.
that's the thing. But and it's amazing how often accurate that theory of Joe Avati's is. So you grew up really in a smallish town and in Massachusetts, so that'd be fair, wouldn't it, to say that
Yeah,
it's
would
not
say.
large? In fact, it wouldn't be much larger than Wimber Valentia,
No,
if at
probably.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and would I be right in saying that the Italian community, let alone the Calabrese community, would be a minority in the town?
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean,
Yeah,
we kept kind of close to those that we knew were in
yeah,
the Italian community, but yeah, you're right. It was
yeah.
among the smaller.
And in terms of the Calabrese community, how large was that community?
Honestly, it was quite decent. There's probably 10 or 15 families
Yeah.
in Norwood that are from Calabria.
And are they all related?
Not all related, but you would say that if their kids were around the same age, we grew up together,
Yeah.
feeling like we were related.
And well, that's what I was leading to. In terms of socialisation and socialising when you were young,
Yeah.
was that mainly within the Calabrese community and within your own parental household?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Growing up. Yeah.
And was that different? The life within the home, was that different to your life experience when outside in the outside world, such as school, work, and
Yes and no. I think my parents did a really good job of I never felt like I was embarrassed to be Italian or
no?
felt like I ever had to kind of hide that from others. I think that we really stayed close. And we were among, I mentioned too that my family, my brothers and I were among one of the few families that spoke Italian at home.
And was that a conscious decision by your parents, or was it just they preferred to speak their own tongue rather than the host?
Yes, I think that my mother really struggled in the beginning when she went to America, leaving her family behind, and she always said to us that when my grandparents called on the phone, she wanted
Yeah,
we were able to communicate with them. That was really important to her.
yeah,
So we were often, my parents spoke Calabrese or Italian at home. It was very rare that
yeah.
we spoke English.
And did your mum work in the United States?
She did, yep, and she still does. She's worked for a a department store as a seamstress
Yeah.
for.
And was that the same work that she was doing before she married?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about your brothers? Are they, what do they do?
My oldest brother is a civil engineer, and my middle brother works for a human resources department for a large company.
And are they still living in Norwood, or have they had to leave?
So my oldest brother moved just a few towns over from Norwood, and my other brother Gianfranco has moved to actually another state called Rhode Island, which is quite close to Massachusetts.
And presumably because they were chasing
Yeah,
better opportunities.
yeah, yeah,
So not much different from the what you said your dad had to do from Italy.
exactly.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing that we often don't appreciate, that similar pressures exist in, in nearly every country, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And growing up, and you obviously grew up in what you've described as a very Calabrese um, um, environment. What about school friends? How did you relate with your school friends? Or were they all Calabrese background? In other words,
Yeah, so I had growing up, I had two really good friends who were Italian but not Calabrese. So I think we kind of stuck together in school, and that um, we just had a lot more in common, like
yeah,
certain rules at home and
yeah,
whatnot. Um, but school is definitely different. I was always the kid with you know the sopressata sandwich or mortadella and Nutella, and people didn't,
yeah,
always understand those things.
yeah.
But yeah, it was fine.
Yeah. And what sort of activities did your parents and their friends undertake in order to preserve that culture that you've described?
Yeah, so I mean, they've stuck together in that, we still do the tomato sauce, we do salami, and all of that. And I'd say that, if one family was going to the farm to pick tomatoes, the parents would kind of call each other, they'd carpool, the men would bring their trucks, and
Mm.
we'd all kind of set up and go together. So I think a lot of that they tried to do as families so
Yeah.
that they stuck together, and it
And
was.
I guess living in a small town is conducive to preserving that sort of lifestyle. Whereas, for example, if you'd been living in New York, I'd imagine it would have been a little more difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd
Okay.
say so.
And did your parents take you to Italy
Yeah,
at any?
yeah.
How often?
So we used to go every other summer for my whole life.
Mm.
Up until the pandemic, we've been traveling every other year.
And how did you find going to Italy and life there compared to the life you were leading in Norwood?
I really enjoyed it. My brothers and I really, we really cherished that time in Calabria. One being that all of our cousins were there. We didn't have first cousins that we got to celebrate holidays with or all year round. So we really hung on to that. And then just being with our nonni as well. And then, of course, the Calabrian summers, I always say I don't think can be beat. Going to the beach
Mm.
and kind of that lifestyle of just, go to the beach and then you go out at night, and
Yeah.
you
Well,
just do that kind of constantly, and it's really nice.
well, in Vibo, you wouldn't have been too far from Pizzo and Tropea, which,
Exactly. Yes, my
yeah,
favorite place on earth is Tropea.
yeah. And you obviously went to Tropea. It's a beautiful place, isn't
Yes, it's amazing.
it? Yeah. Tell me, going back to Norwood and your social um, upbringing, are all your friends from the Calabrese community, are they all, so how shall I put it, as equally committed to the Calabrese culture as you appear to be?
Unfortunately, I would say no.
Yeah. And what do you think is the difference that somebody like you who's still committed, but others who have got, I assume, similar backgrounds to you in the sense that their parents are Calabrese, they're nonni Calabrese, they're born in the same town,
Yeah.
and yet
I
they've gone,
I think that the fact that I still have ties to Calabria, and the fact that I was able to really connect with my family there because I did not have a language barrier, that I feel a much stronger connection, and we were able to kind of live that out in the States as well.
yeah. So would you say that language is essential to retaining the culture?
For me, I feel like yes.
Yeah.
Um, I really do think so, just because I have a much greater appreciation because it's not like I'm going there and I'm uncomfortable. I'm really able to get
Mm.
get the best of everything because I'm able to understand what's happening around me and why these things are done. And
And these other friends that may be not as committed as you, uh, to your knowledge, did any of them return to Italy at any stage? Or
it with their parents, I would say, like
mm,
if their parents were going, and but my brothers and I kind of got to a point where we started going on our own time.
so clearly it didn't have the same impact on your friends. The return to Calabria as it obviously had on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all right, and you mentioned that in your family you spoke Italian and Calabrese. What about your friends? Am I to infer that in their families they didn't retain the language and that's why they're distancing themselves from the culture as well? Or
Yeah, I think that most times their parents spoke, but they responded in English,
right,
whereas my parents didn't want us to do that.
yeah,
They were speaking to us in Italian.
because that's a very similar experience to Australia as well.
Yeah,
The large majority of us um, have lost the language,
yeah,
which I think entails a certain diminution, if not loss, of the culture. And that's interesting that it appears to be the same situation in the United States. Um, Tell me, from your recollection, was there any prejudice against the Calabrese or Italians in Norwood that you can remember?
not that I experienced, um, but I know that there was a few older generations that really struggled, especially in Norwood.
What about your father, for example, as a young man of 18?
Yeah.
Did he recount to you any stories about elements of prejudice within the broader community against him?
Yeah, he did tell like a few stories that, Norwood was a town where, and still is a town where a lot of immigrants come. Um, and there was quite a bit of the feeling of, you're stealing our jobs type thing.
Mm.
So I know that my dad really did struggle, and a lot of times, um, with language, and I think people kind of gave him a hard time about not
Yeah,
speaking language properly.
because your dad didn't speak English when he migrated. Is that
No,
yeah?
no, he learned it.
And did he learn English?
Yeah, he learned English. And even my mom said when she came after they were married, and he would have been there for 10 or 11 years before that,
No.
he still had pretty broken
Yeah,
English because most of the men that he worked with,
yeah,
were Italian, so he
right.
wasn't practicing as much.
Yeah, and the lack of expertise in English was reflected in the attitude of others towards him as being an outsider, basically. Would
Yeah,
that be fair?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And did your father resent that?
In the beginning, he said that he did have a tough time. He did feel really out of place.
Mm.
Um, but I think as kind of time went on, and I think it kind of became trendy to follow into the Italian culture, and Italian Americans became kind of, it became a really big thing. And I I think that they
Yeah.
were kind of eased up on that.
Did you have any similar experiences to your dad about that reaction from non-Italians?
Um, no, not really. I didn't have any instances where I felt uncomfortable or felt strange for being Italian. Luckily, no,
Yeah,
I don't think I did.
yeah. And you've told us you're a nurse, and your brothers are both in professions. Um, what was your parents' attitude to education as you were growing up for you kids?
It was very, very important to my parents, as they both just graduated. High school was their highest level of education. So for us, college and university was really important to them.
And do you think that was because I take it they weren't college educated?
Yeah, it was, I think a large part of it was that they didn't really have that opportunity.
Yeah,
And, even my cousins who are still currently in Calabria, if they chose to go to university, they didn't stay within Calabria. They kind of went further up north in Italy. Um,
yeah,
which, because unfortunately there just isn't much opportunity
yeah.
or colleges for them to.
Well, there's probably as many Calabrese in northern Italy
Yeah.
as probably certainly in Norwood and other parts of the
Yep,
world as well.
exactly.
As I take it you've travelled to northern Italy in your visits, and you would have come across many
Yeah.
of them. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. What made you go into nursing?
I don't know. I felt like I always kind of had a very nurturing character. My parents always told me, like, if someone got hurt, I was always kind of the first one to run over and try to help, even
Right.
if it was just a scrape on the knee.
Yeah.
And I kind of just stuck with that, and it's a really good. And I'm really proud that I stuck with it. It's quite a difficult profession to
Yeah.
get through.
Yeah. And you've now, well, I should ask, I think you said you followed your heart to Australia. Um, I take it you've met some person that you'd like to be with and you are with at the present time. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
So it wasn't a career choice to come to Australia.
No.
No. And you're now working in the health system, which is a bit different to the health system in the United States, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What are the great major differences that you would see, having worked in both systems, between our system here in Australia and that in the United States?
Yeah. So I'd say that I'm pretty lucky in that the hospital I've come from in the US was a pretty major hospital in Boston.
Mm,
Um, and then the hospital I'm working here, I'd say is a major hospital in Melbourne, the Royal Melbourne Hospital. Um, so I'm seeing very different things, and that I think a very common misconception is that in America, whether you have health insurance or not determines how you receive care, which actually isn't true. Everyone, regardless of insurance status, is treated the same.
yeah,
Whereas in Australia, it's my understanding that there are public and private hospitals, and I work at a public hospital, um, which you receive different care. um, they they try to make it the same standard, but I think, kind of gathering, I can see that it can be quite different between two hospitals.
which do you think is a better, the private or the public?
It seems like being a private patient is better. um, but I will say that the type of floor that I'm on, because it's so specialized in trauma and orthopedics,
Yeah,
and
but we've got universal health cover here in Australia, like the United States. And as I understand it, here in Australia, um, people without the extra health coverage are still treated. For example, if someone is injured in a traffic accident, I don't think their financial status is going to determine the level of care that they receive. But
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, and in terms of the um, perception and appreciation of nurses, are there any differences in the two systems? In other words, were you more appreciated in the States than you are here, or vice versa?
No, to be honest, I think ever since the COVID pandemic, I think that people in general have a much greater
Yeah, yeah,
nurses.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's still the same.
yeah, yeah. And where did you meet your loved one?
So my summer of 2018, my godmother's daughter was married, which is my partner's Zia.
Right.
So they came to the US for her wedding. Um, and yeah, we just kind of hit it off there and
Yeah,
we did a bit of long distance and
yeah,
then got to be too difficult. So
yeah. And in terms of socialising here in Australia, are you still socialising mainly with Italians in Calabrese, or is it more expanded here?
yeah, I would say I'd say that the Calabrese community here is quite close knit as well. My partner's father is actually Greek, so a bit of Greek culture as well, which is something I haven't really been exposed to.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as well as the Calabrese culture here, I think it's stronger here.
Right. You think it's stronger here than in the United States? Yeah. Yeah. Well, because one of the things we're finding with the Australian Calabrese Cultural Association is that it's very difficult to motivate young people to participate. Now, I don't know whether that's because they've got other interests or they're not interested, or it's our failure that we're not putting on events that are of appeal to them. In your social group, do you ever discuss, um, the Calabrese culture and how it can be preserved or what could be done that isn't being done?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be hard to kind of
Yeah.
grasp.
I think your volume has gone down again. I'm sorry to.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
A little bit better, not a great deal, to be honest. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not really sure how I could.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. Yeah.
Um, so I think it's kind of hard to gauge the attention of a younger crowd sometimes, but maybe offering, you know, like dinners or cooking classes or something that can kind of be
Right.
more hands on.
Yeah. Well, we've got him trained to have a cooking demonstration by a a person who's been trained at the William Angliss school, and we have. I think it's the 30th of July. So tell your friends
Okay.
and everybody that we've got a Tarantella night,
Ah, okay.
which hopefully, well, Leo Seratore, who I think you know,
Yeah.
will get an invitation because he's a member, and hopefully we'll have a good attendance. But it'll be Rosa Vosta. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a dancer who runs a school of Tarantella,
Oh,
and
wow.
she'll be performing and demonstrating and actually teaching anyone who wants to get up and dance on the night. So the 30th of July, and we'd love to see as many young people there as possible. So if you can disseminate the information amongst your group and make, put pressure on you to organise at least one table.
Including.
Yeah. No, because I think you're right. It's a question of hitting the right spot, as it were, the things that attract young people. And you mentioned that as a child you were involved in salami making. Well, we've got a salami making demonstration as well planned, which should be early July. So again, that can be via Zoom. So
Yeah.
there shouldn't be. Hopefully, it'll be well viewed. But other than that, what would you think would be of appeal to younger people, younger Calabrese people?
I think that the understanding
Yeah,
how many things there really is to do in Calabria and kind of open the minds of traveling there and seeing the amazing parts
yeah, yeah,
of kind of
yeah,
our region as well. Um,
yeah. Well, we did that in 2019. We had a conference in Cosenza, in Calabria, and we're planning to have another one next year, late next year. Everything being equal, we had planned another one, but COVID meant that we had to postpone it. Um, but again, what was interesting is we had a good number of people go, but not very many younger people for some reason. Now, whether it wasn't properly advertised or whatever, we don't know. But in any event, they're in the planning stages, and hopefully we can attract young people because clearly, as you would be aware, it's the younger people that carry on the culture as you've done, uh, albeit thanks to your parents and the work that they've put in. But nevertheless, as you've said, you've got friends who aren't as committed as you,
yeah,
and you would have come across similar attitudes here in Australia, I dare say, where people say, "Oh, yeah, we Calabrese, but so what?" Uh, and nevertheless, I think it's important. The And I think, well, you may not be aware, but what we don't have here, which exists in the United States, are associations which are dedicated to not just preserving Calabrese culture, but Italian culture in general. Have you heard of the National Italian American Foundation?
no, I haven't.
No, okay. Well, that's a very thing. All right. And how long do you see yourself living in Australia?
We're
That
taking
depends on the heart, I guess.
yeah, we're taking it day by day, but I'm really enjoying my time here.
Yeah. We might have there might be a bit of a contest between going back to the States
Yeah,
as a couple or living in Australia as a couple, I dare say. But
yeah,
from a selfish point of view, let's hope it's Australia that succeeds. Because I take it you've obviously got relatives here in Australia as well, haven't you?
yes.
Yeah, very many.
I actually had a Zio who's now passed away, but he was in Sydney and his family's in Sydney.
Right,
Some distant cousins here, in Melbourne.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. And all right. And have you got any further trips to Italy planned?
Hopefully, I think I it's so my partner hasn't been to Calabria, so it's very important for me to take him out there and
Right,
to meet my grandparents.
right.
So we're hoping during the summer that we can make it out there.
Oh, good. That'll be
Yeah.
good. And well, maybe you can kill two birds with one stone. And if we run the conference, come along to the conference, and
Oh,
then
I would love that.
stay
I would
on a
love
bit
that.
longer. Yeah. And how have you enjoyed Australia so far?
Yeah, it's been amazing, honestly. So I got here at the beginning of summer, which was really nice because I got to kind of go out through the beautiful summer here. And coming from Boston, it's very cold around for winter, so this has been a nice break for me. It's quite
Yeah.
warm to what I'm used to. Lots of snow and and whatnot. So it's been
Well, we've got snow here as well, you know.
yeah, not near us though, not near where I am right now.
No, we don't. We don't need a snow plough in the streets. Um, yeah, and did you organise your work before you travelled, or did you arrive in Australia and then look for work?
So I had to organize my license to transfer my nursing license to Australia, and that took me about a year
Right.
um, to just finalize all the paperwork. And then, yeah, I applied to a job a few days after I landed in Australia. And luckily I got the job kind of right away, which was great.
Yeah. Well, and if I may say so, at a very good hospital,
Yeah,
the Royal Melbourne, as you would be aware.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. And so I take it that you're happy to be in Australia and you're continuing to live your Calabrese lifestyle. Yeah.
yes.
All right. All right. Well, look, I think time's up, but thank you so much, Laura, for
Thank you for having
having a chat with us. It's been our pleasure. And obviously, the aim of the program is to show the great breadth and variety of people of Calabrese heritage,
me.
and not just in occupational, but in attitude style as well. And more importantly, it's good to speak to someone of the younger generation, as I said to you, because we need to attract more and we need to make the association relevant to them. And
Yeah,
so, after the interview, if you reflect on it and you think of anything that we can do or that can help, please let us know, because
I'm happy to do so.
that's why we're there. And
Yeah.
thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye bye.